Okay, we're ready to go now. So, people ready? Okay, so Deputy Mayor, is your amendment still as it is?
It is.
Okay, thank you. CFO, did you clarify? I asked you to clarify capital and operating because it seemed odd that you would treat them differently.
Yep. So as I understand it, I have not had an opportunity to talk to the Deputy Mayor yet, but the Deputy Mayor's suggestion is that we retain the ownership of the pool and we pay for the refurbishment up to $4.5 million with fundraising trust to raise the remainder of the money, which would then come to council and we would continue to run and operate the pool. So from a capital point of view, there would be $4.5 million expended, and then there would be the ongoing operating costs of $200,000 to be included with that. Right. And the figures that we have run through after that understanding would see the debt to revenue ratio push out to 2021, the money coming through as a loan or additional to our debt, and would actually push our debt to $501,525 in 2024, and then dropping back to 174% by 2025. So that would actually increase our debt position.
And does the operating money, I mean, it's a roundabout figure, does that do anything to the balance books situation?
Yes, it does, Your Worship, but because we're starting in 2018, assuming that it's year 3, we have enough in the balancing the books budget to actually cover that. It reduces, obviously, that surplus that we have by about $200,000 per annum plus the cost of the interest. Right,
so just then picking up on Councillor Wilson's one, his is a different treatment.
Can I just ask a question on that, the first one, Gordon's one? 4.5 million is what council's been asked to put in. How much more do they need to have to fix the thing up, to get it going? So the fundraising trust would need to raise another 4 million as well, would it?
About 1.3 for an outdoor pool. And
on top of the 4.5 would get going?
Yeah, we've estimated about 5.8. And then if it was an indoor pool with a smaller Lenta swim pool as well, up to 8.8 million.
In total?
In total.
Or on top of the 4.5?
No, in total.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
scenario 1, they'd have to raise $1 million to 1.3 million. Scenario 2, indoor pool, they'd have to raise approximately another 4 to 4.3 million.
Thank you.
Just further to clarify that, everyone here is familiar with the Mark Wassing drawing. So is the 8 million that, and is the 5 million, I mean, not precisely that, but of course fixing the pool up to operate is very different from refurbishing and renovating the complex itself. So what's the difference?
Well, the Mark Wassing drawing that we put in the December and February reports was for an outdoor pool complex. Be clear that you're actually rebuilding the pools, you're not refurbishing the current tanks. Okay, so you'd be building something pretty much new. And his drawings, you know, they captured the essence of the historical design and that sort of thing, even though it'd be new modern type of
so is
assets.
that sort of like the $8 million version?
No, it's the lesser version,
okay.
But there's also another version of the covered one as well. So
okay, good. Just so that we've got a picture in our mind.
Yep.
Okay. All right, thanks. So now on the second
Can I just point of clarification on what was just said?
Yeah.
My understanding from Sink and Swim is that they very clearly want an outdoor complex, which would make it the lower amount, and they quite strongly don't want an indoor complex. So
yeah, no, I think everyone knows that. We're just trying to get a fix on, because Councillor Mallett's question, which was a good one, is if there's 4.5 put in, what's the rest? and I think the General Manager's clarified that pretty well. Yeah, I think everyone understands that.
Yeah, it's not the 8 million that they're looking for.
No, I think everyone's read their submissions, and I mean, they've come and spoken frequently to us, so yeah, that's clear. So
Just
the-
what we call the rest, the contribution from the fundraising trust, that is not to be a loan to council, that is a contribution towards the cost, so that what
It's
I'm
contribution,
suggesting here is
yes.
that the council won't subsequently have to pay that fundraising trust back for the contribution that they make to the rebuild of the pool.
That was my interpretation of the Deputy Mayor's comments, but I'll refer to him.
Your Worship, if the money wasn't raised, it wouldn't go ahead.
Yeah, right.
But that money's not to be repaid back.
Well, the money wouldn't be passed over, it would be...
No, I'm talking about the contribution from the fundraising trust.
No, it's not.
That would not be a loan back to
No.
council.
No.
That council would need to repay at some future
No,
stage.
that's
Just to
not-
clarify, the fundraising trust couldn't go to a bank and say, can you lend us $4 million, and the security is that the council's going to pay it back over 20 years.
Yeah.
It has to be a clean contribution.
Grant.
A
Grant to
grant,
council.
grant, yeah.
Okay, so the first one, gosh.
So the substantive motion, which was Councillor Wilson's motion, I've clarified with him. His motion is around giving a grant to another body to run the pool. They would also receive the buildings that go with the pool and the pool itself as a donation from council effectively. That building is probably valued at a low value at the moment. And then the land would be retained by council, so the actual underlying land would remain council's. So from that point of view, the $670,000 is an operating cost. It's a grant to whoever takes over the ownership of
But
that
just
pool,
handing it completely over with the 600-odd thousand.
other than the land.
Right. So Councillor Wilson, what happens then if on the handing over, it is handed over and nothing happens because of the inability of the receiver to generate funds to do something?
So, Your Worship, our 670 is not handed over until they've raised the quantum to make the said improvements,
Right.
and the land is always retained by council.
Okay, all right, that's clear with everyone?
Your Worship, can I just say that the land would, it would be problematic to gift the land because it's actually derived from Tainu and it would trigger the first rights of refusal.
I'm
So-
not gifting the land.
No, I understand that. I
land
just want to make that clear though.
Yes.
Because there's some.
But that doesn't preclude the handing over of the pool
No.
itself?
No.
No.
So what Councillor Wilson's proposing is okay around not triggering that first rights of refusal.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right,
just wanted
that's
to be
good.
clear on that.
So are there, General Manager, just might go to you, given, so sorry, just carry on with the finances, what implications or consequences does the first one have?
So the first one has a balancing the books budget in 2016 of $358,000. That assumes that the grant would in fact be triggered in year one. Obviously, if that was deferred, then that would flow out. And then the debt level remains achieved in 2020. It peaks at $493,848,000 in 2024 and drops back to 171% in 2025. Balancing the books, we would reach balancing the books surplus in all years.
Okay, thank you. So General Manager, just have a few comments on, is it a finance question, or I'm just going to get the General Manager to make some comments about any other information that he thinks we need to know on these?
It's just to get some clarification from Ewan on this proposal.
All right. Yep, go.
Thank you. I believe that the pools for the $670,000 Ewan has proposed could be up and running by putting a fiberglass liner in there, a new filtration system, upgrading the filtration system and a new heating system, and they'd be open. Inside the 670,000, are you good with that, Ewan?
I think my motion would simply enable a community group to come back to council with a proposal for how they would relaunch the swimming facilities that are there. And whether that is in an interim mechanism leading to a more significant refurbishment, would obviously, we as council would look at that in the proposal that would come back. What my proposal simply says is we're recognising it as an important facility historically. We're capping our financial obligations and sending a very clear message that we're not interested in providing ongoing operational funding, that in this current financial situation, we're trying to find an even balance. We're prepared to submit the amount of money that we would spend according to staff in completing a full demolition. And if a proposal came back to us that enabled the pool to be re-erected and up and operating and self-sufficient, then I think our obligation would be to provide the 670,000. We would still retain the ownership of the land. After all, our motivation is for the facility to be used.
Okay, does that answer your question, Councillor King?
Do you see it qualifying under the pool partnership model?
Look,
once it was up and running? Because I understand the concept is a trust would run it. Other private pools qualify under the pool partnership model. Do you see that's where it would fit in?
Look, I think that's a separate issue. To me, I think that's if the council, whatever the council's policy at the time is in regards to pool partnerships are, if they could go through the normal process and if they met the criteria, then that's clearly a function of that process. It is definitely separate to this process. So I wouldn't be committing in my recommendation or my motion to attach the two. I'm simply saying it's 670,000, we retain the land. If they can come back to us with the proposal, great. If they can't, then I guess this council will have to look in a year's time that the alternative is a final to demolish it. But so I think it's a separate issue, Andrew, because it's a separate policy that have to apply under a separate policy.
All right, so that answers your questions?
Yeah, do you think the timing of a year's time is going to get complicated with an election right on us? And would you consider changing it to avoid that?
Well, from my political experience, I always find election times quite focusing. They focus people's minds.
Okay, so that answers your question, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, General Manager, just some comments. I think there's some other things around this. Obviously, River Plan's one. You've covered off first right of refusal. So, just
probably the other thing is just what Councillor King's alluded to is just what are the drop dead dates on the proposals and when groups would have to come back and when they would have to raise the money by before the proposal being null and void and council looking at its other alternatives. The other thing is what you mentioned.
Should we answer that question? Because he's asked the first one.
So you can put he can go through his, what he wants to say, but can you put the resolutions up so that we can read them?
The other one, Your Worship, was probably just the River Plan and my understanding, and I think Jake's in the room too, is the Ferrybank precinct planning, master planning. Obviously this location actually lies within that precinct. And I think councillors probably just need to consider how any decisions today would actually fit into that process in the future.
Right. So, Jake, there's a motion and an amendment, which is to make some final decisions about the municipal pool. Do you have some? Are there any comments you want to make, so that councillors have the broader understanding of what's going on?
Give me one moment, Your Worship.
Your Worship, I wonder if I could answer the first question, first part of the question from the General Manager in terms of defined timing. Under the motions proposal, the first critical date is the community would need to come to us with a proposal by the end of November 2015. Please do not mistaken that for having raised the funds, what it simply states is that they have to come to us with a proposal. And that proposal may be that they'll take the next 12 or 18 months to raise the funds. Conversely, if they embrace the Andrew King model, they may come and say, actually, we've got a strategy that simply says we can raise the money that we need in 6 months and we're just going to do a lining, and with your money, we're up and running much earlier. So the critical date is for the proposal, not for the funds.
Okay, thank you. So, Jake, do you have some comments about the RIB plan? Because this is on the ferry bank, and I know you've spoken to us about a detailed planning exercise. It's going to start on the ferry bank.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I mean, staff are currently in the planning stages around a ferry bank development plan, and that's, you know, we'll be looking to bring some more information to council about that probably around the end of August. But really, the process for that master planning or development planning process will be from the middle of this year through to sort of the middle of next year. If council was to resolve to support a pool at that location, then obviously that information would feed into any design brief or any planning process. So obviously it's most useful for the ferry bank development plan process that we know whether or not there will be a pool there or not, because that's a pretty significant piece of land.
Okay, so it will impact, what you're saying is you want certainty for that planning process.
And my motion would achieve that, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Your
All
Worship,
right,
could I
yes.
just, there was talk of a skin in the current pool. I have some concerns about that. The engineering information we have is that the pool isn't stable, and that there's a tomo behind it, and we've had engineering information, and that's why the costs are a lot higher than what's been, you know, discussed a couple of years ago. So with that information, you would be looking at a rebuild of at least the large pool at the municipal pool site, rather than just throwing some fiberglass in it. I think we'd have a whole bunch of health and safety risks if that was the case.
So, as Councillor Wilson has said, by November this year, armed with all of that information, they'll come back and say, this is what we're intending to do.
Yes.
And all that information, as I understand it, is available to
Yes,
everyone.
absolutely.
And Sink and Swim have had it all anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Just,
All right.
Sorry, just Councillor Wilson, if we're going to be coming forward with a request for proposal 2015, it's not likely that we'll be tripping 670 the following year. My apologies, councillors. It's not likely that we'll be putting in the 670 until the year after that, would we?
Yeah, I think on reflection, I think you're right.
Be 16, 17 more.
16, 17.
As it turns out, the quantum is of such a level that whenever we implement it, we're still able to balance our budget, still within the stated cap debt. So we still meet all of our criteria wherever it's implemented.
I agree. I was making sure we get the amendment
sure.
right. Yep.
Okay, so Councillor Pascoe, you had some
Yes, I've got a question I'd like to direct to staff, and that is, it's my understanding that about 4 years ago, the council went through this process. 6 of us sitting around the table weren't in that council that went through the process of making the decision to close the pool down, and presumably at that time there was significant discussion going on with the interested groups and so forth. So is it possible to give us a little bit of a background now as to what happened then in a short number of sentences, and what is perhaps different now to reactivate suggestions of a community council sort of initiative, when my reading of the submissions that came through from the various groups supporting the reopening of the municipal pools, except I think for submission 197, none of them suggested that they were particularly keen on sitting down with council and putting together a council community partnership to get the pool up and running again.
To put it succinctly, I think it was 2 years ago, might have been a little bit longer than that, when there was a resolution of council, and Sink or Swim became a committee of the Hamilton East Community Trust, and spoke to a number of funders around raising philanthropic funds to put towards the refurbishment of the pool. The problem they had was that the funders said, well, there's actually no financial commitment from the owner of the pool and the operator at that stage. So they said it was unlikely they would commit to any funding unless the owner of the pool actually did commit to funding. So this is probably what's different in these proposals here. So you know, it was probably quite a difficult situation for Sink or Swim to actually achieve raising some funds or definite funds at that stage, apart from just expressions of interest in some indications. So that's essentially in a nutshell.
Okay, but the submissions that we've got in the long-term plan don't suggest now that if we did have that relationship, that they have an appetite to go out and raise funds within the community to advance the project?
I think you might want to see if there's any nods in the gallery. Look, I'm not aware of if there's any group that said they would do that. Obviously, it is a big undertaking. It doesn't mean to say there isn't, but Sink or Swim would probably be better placed to answer that than me. I haven't had any indications.
Well, I think the submissions are really clear,
Yep.
and also at the engagement meetings, I mean, there were a number of conversations in all of those meetings from Sink and Swim people, which was really helpful for those of us that were there, about those very questions, wasn't it? It was about council investment in the project. Yeah.
My recollection was it was all about council investment in the
it was.
project. Yeah.
That's the feedback is that staff have had from, and not just Sink or Swim, other people over the past 3 years, is that people saw it as a council responsibility.
Yeah. So,
Your Worship, and I guess that's deliberate why my motion talks about going out to the general public to go well beyond just Sink or Swim and to see and trawl and see if there's anybody interested in a private public. And it clearly brings to an end and it sends a clear message that, in my opinion, this council isn't in a position to spend $4.5 million under this financial situation, and it just brings to an end that expectation, but enables the community, if they want to get involved, to do a fundraising, and we put together a proposal, or we don't. But at least the community can't say that we didn't go out one last time and go well further than just one or two groups that have approached us.
so are there any more clarifying questions required here? No? Okay, so we've got an amendment and a motion. So are councillors comfortable to speak to both when they speak, or do you want to deal with them individually?
Happy to do them together, Your Worship.
Do them together?
They are two different issues, Your Worship, and I'm a bit worried if we do them together. And there was a talk from someone before about something similar to the Deputy Mayor's resolution, but with a lesser amount, whereas it's a different kettle of fish, the motion itself.
So that's why we took a 5-minute break, so that a discussion between Councillor Forsyth and the Deputy Mayor could take place, and as those discussions have happened in that break, and the money's still the money. Yeah. So what do other councillors want to do? Deal with them together or separately? Together. Together? Together?
These are totally different outcomes.
Oh, no,
for totally
I
different
accept,
reasons.
Councillor King,
and
they are
when
different.
the amendment failed, somebody may well change their position on the motion. And
Yes.
by putting them together, how can you speak to the motion when you don't know the outcome of the amendment?
Oh, no, look, I totally agree with what you're saying. They're quite different. I'm just seeking the guidance of the group here as to what would you like to do. But look, let's deal with them separately. Let's go with it like that. So the amendment. So Councillor or Deputy Mayor, it's your amendment. Do you want to speak?
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I'm supporting the amendment, obviously, Councillor Wilson. The $670,000 won't achieve a viable community outcome. The hurdle's too high. If you want to pull the plug, pull it now. We've already had the Sink or Swim people go through a process or several processes over the last 4 years, and this is the crunch decision now. So if you do it at $670,000, expect that it won't proceed in any shape or form. That is my view of it. But I need to acknowledge that I absolutely acknowledge the absolute priority of a pool in the northeast of the city. So I'm going to argue for that as well when the opportunity arises. We are sitting on an outstanding opportunity at the southern end of Victoria Street, linking in with the river plan, our new heritage policy that's going out for public consultation. And just this week I received the Heritage New Zealand magazine that features Wellington's Freiburg pool. Only 50 or 60 years old, but it's working and people love it. I've been to the Auckland Tepid pools, to the Parnell pools. What a great success story those pools have been to capture the heritage aspects of life in those cities. Mark Wassang, the Hamilton architect, has put a lot of effort into the Hamilton East Community Trust and the Sink or Swim group, and he's done a range of drawings, and I'm attracted by all of them. And I talked about the 8.8 million. That's just my personal preference. Glass it in. If it's heat, then it retains the heat. But the Sink or Swim people would prefer an outdoor pool, and I'm delighted with the drawings that Mark Wassang has done. Now, 21 schools close to the pool have been using it until it closed down. 21 schools. And while I've heard people talk about the new pool in the north of Victoria Street, it's a closed shop. It's a private club. It's not open for public consumption because it's an expensive membership gym only. So put that out of your thinking. And so the reason that I'm supporting a jump and moving our ratios and balancing the books by a year, it doesn't matter in my view. Because I get sick of this business about debt capping at $440 million. Even the government mandates a debt to revenue ratio of 250%. And we're talking about 200%. And I'm saying in the scope of all of the engagement sessions that I attended, and I attended all of them, there is some great need out in the community for a number of projects. I support the provision of the non-fluoridated water supply, just a simple thing, $30,000, $60,000. There are a number of other things that I think we need to support. And I don't care that we might have to take on more debt. It's still under the level. And for goodness sake, 200% of revenue, give or take a few million, probably represents an ability to go up to 570 million of debt in that ratio, 200% against what the government is happy with, 250%. And our plan calls for 486 million. So I'm saying there is some room to manoeuvre. And I think we would be crazy to sit back and say, well, nothing's changed. The economy hasn't changed. Things aren't improving. And I'm saying they have been. All of the indicators are suggesting that. So I know that I will be offside with a number of councillors suggesting that we should release the brake a bit but still keep it under the percentage that we've talked about. And I think we've got a responsibility to the municipal pools, when completed to the standard that Mark Wassang has envisaged, it will be an absolute asset to the city. And you will look back and say, why did we even debate this? Because we made it work. And at $670,000, just forget it. It's an absolute waste of time, and you're not going to motivate the community again to go out and try and get money from the philanthropic trust to assist in doing this work. So I'm asking councillors to support Councillor Forsyth and I with being more aggressive and accepting that the economy has changed, our finances have improved, and we need to start addressing some of this pent-up tension around what our community wants. This is about making our community a better place to live.
Thank you. Right, second, Councillor Forsyth, do you want to speak to the amendment? You know, I've got you, Councillor Wilson. I was just going through the process of, you know, mover and seconder.
Yeah, just briefly. I'd like us to make a decision today, stop dithering around like we have been for a number of years. I think Sink or Swim and the Hamilton East Community Trust have already beavered away to try and come to some sort of fundraising quantum and have understood and realised how difficult that project has been. And after having just spoken to Sink or Swim members, if anything is going to happen, if there's going to be any sort of partnership going forward, council has to have some skin in the game. And frankly, I don't think $670,000 does anywhere near addressing that. So I think we make a decision. We're here to make decisions. You either support that we go forward with the pool or we don't. So today's the day, in my mind.
Okay, thank you. Now, Councillor Wilson, you next.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Chesterman, I have a feeling you've had more positions on the issue of debt than the Kama Sutra.
I knew you were.
We knew
Okay,
that.
so Councillor Wilson, in the spirit of
Unparliamentary
paying
language.
more attention to the standing orders, let's keep it
How
seemly.
many was that position?
Your Worship, I remind you that, in fact, the book on Kama Sutra is a well-published and recognised publication available in all good libraries around the world. So I struggle to see how you'd find that inappropriate. But the bottom line is, can I remind the Deputy Mayor of some of the statements he's just made? He has used the words, "it doesn't matter" in regards to debt. He went on to say, "I do not care if we take on more debt." That is absolutely inconsistent with your electoral promises some 18 months ago.
Point of order, Your Worship.
Yes, and what is that?
I have an issue over so-called electoral promises. I made no electoral promises. The advertisements that I paid for have been checked and nowhere is the word promise used. And in addition, the Councillor King, who has used that advertisement, has not referred to a fact-ridden second paragraph which simply acknowledges the success of this council in bringing down the debt during very, very tough
Speech to me.
times.
What's the point of order here?
The point of order is
Can we get to the point of order and then you can rule on it? This is a speech about...
Thanks, Councillor King, for your assistance in managing the meeting.
It's a pleasure.
There's a couple of things that are really important to understand. I can hear, I can read, and I can speak. So I'm in hearing mode at the moment. And then I'm going to read the section, and then I'm going to speak in response. Are we happy with that? Great.
I think it was a political speech. I don't think it was a point of order.
And I didn't, as I said to you, when people raise a point of order, everyone else is quiet while we listen to it and I make a decision, or the chair of the meeting, whichever meeting it is. So your point of order was what?
And you're not allowed to repeat the speech.
Councillor Wilson had made claims about election promises
No, I'm
made.
talking about the section, and I'm looking at 3.13.1. Which one is it? Under that section.
And page.
This is multi-choice, Gordon.
Yeah, look, I find that
you need-
offensive. I mean,
Yeah, and you know, that's...
Councillor McPherson is talking about a piece of stupidity, multiple choice. So look, give me some respect, Councillor McPherson. I give the respect to you, I expect it back.
Yeah, for sure.
Right,
for sure.
okay,
Seen
are we
some of
going
your
to just
articles.
stop speaking across the room? Great, quiet. Paragraph, or section 3.13.7, types of points of order. Which one is it, please?
Your Worship, from a procedure...
No, I'm not listening to you at the moment, Councillor Wilson, because a point of order has been raised. I'm waiting for under 3.13.7. What is it?
A, B, or C. Is it A, B, or C?
So look, what I'm going to do now...
C is a misrepresentation of a statement.
You get.
Right, and that is misrepresentation in relation to electoral promises.
That's right.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to rule...
None made, none broken.
Yeah. So I'm going to accept what you've said, Deputy Mayor, in relation to the publication of your material, because I don't have it in front of me to read entirely. but I'm going to accept what you've said is correct. So, Councillor Wilson, can you just
Would you like a
focus on...
I
No,
have a
I
copy.
don't actually. I've made my decision. And so can you just, can you just focus on the issue? You know why, people? Because those people at the back there from Sink and Swim have come along today at 9 o'clock this morning to hear the outcome of their issue. And it is now 2:10 in the afternoon. And they're along here to listen to what we've got to say and the decision we're going to make. So let's do them the courtesy of focusing on that issue for them. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. That was very therapeutic for all parties.
So
I'm more than happy.
No, I'm not listening, Councillor King. I'm listening to Councillor Wilson, who has got a very good way of articulating his point of view, and let's listen to it.
Your Worship, I'm more than happy simply to focus on today and the matters that Councillor Chesterman has put forward in this chamber to justify his spending position. And I don't think we have to go any further than to remember these words. It doesn't matter. I do not care if we take on more debt. And I, for one, will remember that at the next election. But the material issue here is whether or not we invest in keeping the municipal pool alive. And from my point of view, I believe that it has some significance in terms of heritage status. And as such, I would like to do as much as I possibly can to save it and to see it continued, or in fact to be used. The problem is, like all of us, we've got to balance it with all the other aspirational goals that this council has. Now, despite what some elected members can recall or can't recall, I definitely recall my electoral promises. And they were 3.8% rate increase, debt cap at 440 million. Now, I remember it 18 months ago. I remember it here today. The proposal in the amendment does not achieve that. In fact, it goes to a significant way of violating it. Brings our debt up to over 530 million. It doesn't enable us to balance our books when we've stated. It's a clear change of the clearly articulated parameters that this council has set. So what I'm saying is actually the hybrid, the middle road, is to say we think it has value, we've committed only the 670,000 that we are, according to the staff report, happy to spend to demolish it. This is what we would spend to demolish it. What I'm saying is, let's put it aside. Let's say to the broader community, not Sink or Swim necessarily, let's just say to the entire community, if you see the value in heritage, if you believe that there is value in having a swimming facility at the south end of the city, then come to this council with a public-private proposal. We in council have $670,000 that we could put towards it. Now, we want to keep the land, but we're happy for you to have the building, and we're happy for you to come forward with a proposal. Now, it's not an ideal world. In an ideal world, I guess we would spend the $8 million, we would build another pool to the northeast. Gosh, we could come up with all sorts of innovative other things we would like to do. But in fact, we can't afford to do that. We have to start to learn to live within our means. The motion enables a very clear message to the community. We're happy to participate, but we're not happy to write a significant check because when we're trying to balance everything else we have to balance in a growing city, it's not a priority. Now, that may not be what they want to hear, but I think we have a fiduciary duty to put it on the table, go back to the community one more time and say, this is what we would spend. We can live within our debt caps. we can live within the rate increases, and if the community wants to join us in a public-private partnership, we can make it work. Has that worked in before? Yes. Remember the soccer initiative where we went out and we initially said no, we would not fund that, and the community said, hold on, no, we're prepared to come and meet you halfway. A perfect public-private relationship that produced a really good outcome. This could be the same. We don't do that by, in my opinion, recklessly spending $4.5 million when we can't afford it.
Councillor McPherson, I have you now.
Thank you, Your Worship. It may come as a surprise to both the Deputy Mayor and to Councillor Wilson that I can actually support both the amendment and the motion, and I'm going to vote for the amendment. If that fails, I'm going to vote for the resolution, the motion itself. What I'm not going to vote for is the original staff proposition that we demolish the whole thing, because I don't believe that is the right answer there. I believe that both of these propositions here do keep the pool option, municipal pool option alive, but neither actually deliver the full deal. Both of them require more work and more funding, unless perhaps Councillor King's suggestion of a skin and some new machinery, etc., were able to fit within the 4.8 million. From what I hear, we're going to need more than that, so more work needs to be done. The last council more or less voted to kick this out, this proposition. It voted to kick out the northeast pool, and there were only a handful of supporters for that at the end. Kicked that out several years. That should have been kept where it was. We would be just swimming in it next summer if it had been kept. That's a pity for an inland city like Hamilton. I think, you know, it seems to me it's a question of timing and priorities. And in terms of priorities and recreation facilities, Hamilton needs swimming recreation facilities more than most other cities in New Zealand because it's an inland city. It doesn't have other options. I do not believe that the Wellington Street beach idea is any sort of realistic option at all. And I think, if I had a vote between that and the municipal pool, I would say one's a nice to have, Wellington Street Beach, the other is an essential to have, which is the municipal pool. I think what I would have liked to have seen in a staff report here is how we could fit in 4.8 million or some other figure within our existing debt caps. And this is where perhaps I disagree with Councillor Wilson. I believe that if we had different set of priorities, less gold-plated roading, for instance, as an example, less grandiose plans in some other areas, perhaps the application of some asset sales funds from good asset sales, I might add, to this area, we might be able to afford it within the time frame we're talking about and within the debt cap we wish to achieve. And that would be what I would, if the amendment gets passed, I will be, for one, asking for the staff to go away and look at how they can redo the budgets over the next 5 years to try and achieve that, because I believe that is possible with a different type of priority.
Okay, any other speakers from the amendment? No? Okay, so...
Councillor.
Sorry, on the amendment, because we're dealing with them separately? No?
Yes,
sorry, Councillor Gallen, did you have your hand up? Sorry.
Yes, I did.
Sorry, I didn't see.
I think it's finely balanced. I think if this amendment does go through, then I'd give notice that I would regard this project as quite an integral part of the Ferrybank River Precinct Project Central City. I do believe a consequence of that would be to actually significantly put back and probably on ice the Wellington Street Beach proposal. I don't think within envelopes of money you can have both at this time, but I do think the proposal that is before us probably has a greater benefit, for example, than the Wellington Street Beach, and then I think it would be beholden on us to go back and rework the figures in terms of the debt cap. And I, with respect, do urge all councillors, elected members, to be very cautious about throwing to the wind debt and borrowing. And I do think Councillor Wilson's absolutely right, because he'd also, rather than talk about that publication you can buy at many bookstores, publication we should always have and read is the V8 report. And I am a little fearful, but perhaps later on, that we forget that report, which again came in on a wave of optimism. And as we know, just look at the dairy industry, how things can change in a nudge. On balance, I'll be supporting the amendment, but I would be looking for some other consequential savings. Every decision has a cost, but I think this is a critical heritage facility, and if we can do this, and it means delaying Wellington Street Beach and one or two things a year or two, so be it.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, I oppose both the motions. I'm kind of gobsmacked sitting here listening to councillors who a month or 6 weeks ago were opposed to any capital funding of any growth in the city, and here quite willy-nilly, quite happy to spend $4.5 million on refurbishing an asset which has already reached the end of its economic life. I think there are greater priorities in this 10-year plan than this project. I've read the submissions. Nowhere in the submissions, and I've made mention of this earlier on, nowhere in the submissions is there any appetite on the part of those supporting the refurbishment or the reopening of the pool to do what we're suggesting today, except for that 197, and also taking into account the recommendations from Sport Waikato that they believe that the city would be better served with another pool either in the northeast or as an attachment to Waterworld. So I will be voting against both the motion and the amendment.
Right, any other speakers on the amendment? Yes, Councillor Mallett.
Just very simply, and it's almost echoing what Rob said, everyone knows, election promises or not, that there were positions taken at the last election. You can call them promises, you can call them whatever you were, but there's a lot of people here, I think, must be feeling a little bit chilly that they are not following up on what they said they were going to do at the at the elections. Here's an opportunity. This is, the staff, I think the staff recommendation to let the thing go. It is old, it's worn out. Yeah, I've got fond memories of it. I swam there when I was a little kid too. But these things come to an end. These things do have a limited life. And this thing, the municipal pools, have come to the end of their life. We've just got to accept it. There are other ideas what could be done with that property. And I'm shocked that people are considering the $4.5 million given what it's going to do to our debt situations, given what it's going to do to our balancing the books position. So I certainly can't support the amendment. And if the best we can come out of it is Councillor Ewan's motion, I'll support that. But my first priority would be the actual staff recommendation as Rob articulated.
Right. Any other speakers on the amendment? Yes, Councillor Taylor.
Yes, I'll be a vote against the amendment. When we look at the, if my memory serves me correctly, I think Opus did a geotech survey on the pools some years ago.
Was it an Opus one?
Yes.
When was that done?
2012.
And since then, there's a big fault line been found going through the city.
And if I remember correctly from that report, it showed there was very unstable ground beneath the pool, if I can remember correctly.
Is that correct?
Around it, yes.
Yep. So taking that into account, and also the presentation which was given to us by Matthew Cooper from Sport Waikato, looking at the location of the current municipal pools down there, when it was built probably 100 odd years ago, that would be way out of the city. Now, of course, it's really part of the CBD area, and I question whether or not it's appropriate for a public swimming pool to be basically in the middle of the CBD. There was parking facilities around there, and of course it would be great if we had the bike plan, which of course takes everybody to there. But it's all metered parking outside there. There's a pay display across the road, so really it's not the appropriate place. I believe there needs to be another pool somewhere within the city, but not at that location.
Okay, anyone else speaking on the amendment? No? Okay, is Councillor O'Leary, we're going to the board now, is she
Do you,
excused?
do you want me to get?
Well, I don't know, I'm just checking where is
She's
she?
not in the chamber, Your Worship.
Your Worship, I don't know where Councillor O'Leary's gone.
Okay, so we're voting on the amendment.
Do you want me to vote for her?
Councillor
I
Mather,
will-
you asking
I
whether
will,
you
Councillor
can
Mather.
vote for Councillor O'Leary?
Yeah, I think she's...
Leave it to me.
Oh, Rob's got it under control there, yeah.
Is there a fence sitting
She
button?
need to be found. What's the protocol here? Just,
No,
we just
a member
Okay.
can leave the chamber,
All right,
Your
we
Worship.
carry on. So we're voting on the amendment, okay, on the board.
Your amendment, isn't it? No, it's just.
Oh, shit.
Oh,
Excuse me.
casting vote.
What you do?
Sorry, I pressed the wrong button.
Gary, now.
It's all right, Gary, you got what you wanted
Can you
anyway.
reset, please?
Reset it. I was going to say, I'm really surprised that you all of these years,
You want to
you've just
recommit?
voted for
That was-
4.5.
You could be the head arms of this council.
We're voting,
Another promise, Gary.
The machine
We're
should know
voting.
that I don't vote for that.
we're voting.
The amendment
the mayor
is
of-
lost, 7 votes against, 5 for.
All right, so the mover of the motion, Councillor Wilson, you wish to speak to the motion?
No, Your Worship.
Right, the seconder of that motion, Councillor McPherson, do you wish to speak to the motion? No?
No. nothing I
Okay,
can see.
who wishes to speak for or against the motion? No one?
We've covered it off in the first
We
one.
did exactly what you
Well,
wanted
yes,
us to do.
I thought practically that's how we would do it.
Yeah, yeah.
But several councillors raised that they were quite distinct and different and we should treat them differently and
That's-
individually.
It doesn't make sense.
All right, so we're going to now vote on
Dave
the
was-
motion.
That's your motion.
Oh my gosh, you've used your casting vote, Your Worship.
Can't help but not.
Again.
No, I've just voted. I mean,
No,
Yeah,
no,
but-
I've done it automatically.
The result is 6 votes for and 6 against, Your Worship. So as chair, you have the opportunity to exercise your casting vote.
Just to be clear, the machine automatically assumes that the
Yes,
mayor-
councillor, it does, but
Make a
the
decision.
chair actually can exercise that as a separate vote to her
Right, so-
deliberative vote.
so I'll exercise my casting vote.
Sorry, Your Worship, if the vote is lost, what happens to the decision then? There is no further resolution on the book,
Well,
so...
I'll call for other motions. So I've exercised my casting vote.
Could I just raise a point when you're ready?
Yeah, so what's the effect then if I've exercised my casting vote?
Have you exercised your casting vote as per the board,
Yes.
Madam Chair? Yes, the motion has been defeated.
Right.
So the pool is now,
So both the motion and amendment have been lost?
So we need another motion to do.
So can I now put the motion?
Sorry, Councillor King had a question.
It's just a process question. You're not allowed to abstain, but you can walk out of the chamber and not be involved in the voting, and that's okay. So you can be at the meeting, you don't like what's going on, so you're not allowed to abstain.
Oh, excuse me, Councillor King.
Yes,
Just rethink what you're saying. Sometimes people have to leave the chamber, dare I say it,
that might
for,
be
you
right.
know, a
But,
bathroom stop.
That might be right, but what I'm asking is, you are allowed to walk out of the chamber if you don't want to vote, and it becomes an abstain. I'm asking a
Well, I
question.
think you can leave the chamber if you need to, yes.
But
Can
it's
you
not
leave
really
the
an abstention, is it? It's
Can you
just
leave
not
the
being-
chamber
So
any
what is
time?
the vote?
A member can leave the chamber.
If this hadn't happened, then you wouldn't have had to use your casting vote.
How dare you?
You wouldn't have had to use your casting vote. It would be a totally different outcome. Yeah,
Democracy Manager, can you answer Councillor King's question, which is, can you give us a short version, Councillor?
So-
Your
so-
question is?
we're not allowed to abstain if we're in the chamber.
That happens all the time.
Standing orders do not allow for a member, when they're in the chamber, to abstain from voting. When a member leaves the chamber, I manually note on the voting screen that that member is no longer present and voting in the meeting, so that vote then doesn't get captured.
Okay, Your
So
Worship,
does that answer your question, Councillor King?
It's never happened before in the last 18 months since I've been here, so
So what's not happened before?
It has.
where
The
someone...
people have not been here when there's been votes taken.
That's correct. That's
Yes,
happened all the time.
sorry, Councillor King, that would be not right. Yes, people go in and out of the chamber and votes are taken.
Your Worship,
All the time.
Your Worship, given
Yes.
that the vote was still up on the board when Councillor O'Leary returned to the chamber, and it was for about a minute there, before it was removed from the board, I ask you to rule that the vote be held again on that, not on the amendment, just on the remaining motion.
What's the protocol here if we voted?
My understanding, Madam Chair, is that the meeting voted, the deliberative vote, you as chair then made a decision to cast your casting vote, which was then declared as being lost, 7 votes against and 6 for. The technology is very old and sometimes it's a bit slow.
I point out, Your Worship, that in the vote on the amendment just before, Councillor Mallett said, whoops, I made a mistake, and we had a re-vote without any particular process. No one objected. So all I'm asking for is the same sort of thing.
What's the process then?
There is an allowance if a member votes in error to raise immediately that there's been an error in the voting and ask for the vote immediately to be recast.
And I mean,
And
I
the
think-
chair rules on that.
And we do, that has happened from time to time. It's
Yes,
surprising if people
yes.
realise they
So-
pushed the wrong
Yes,
button or something.
correct.
My
And
problem,
signal that straight away and then we do it again, which... but
Correct,
this
Madam
is a
Chair.
circumstance.
my problem with the second vote, Your Worship, is that Councillor O'Leary came back while the vote was still on the board, in other words, still in process.
We'd already voted.
And I think on an important issue like this, everyone should have the opportunity to vote if they're here. I'm not arguing about her being out of the room before. I'm just saying, okay, she was back, vote was still on the board. She was being at that point being recorded as an abstention. Why not give her the opportunity to vote?
I think from my perspective, what I was ascertaining from the democracy manager was, had the process of voting been completed, and the democracy manager is saying, yes, it had been completed, she had called the decision, and whether it was because of the, I mean, how old is the technology? Years old?
Over 20 years, Madam Chair.
It was catching up, I guess, with the verbal, you know, where we were at as human beings. Unfortunately, the machine was slower than us, which is somewhat unusual.
Yes,
So
normally much quicker.
my concern then, Councillor McPherson, valid point raised, but my concern then is there's a process once the vote has been completed, you know, in the standing orders, and then we're in that situation, as opposed to, oops, I pushed the wrong button, sorry, I wasn't paying attention or whatever, can we recast, which is a little bit different. So that's the circumstance we find ourselves in. So in order to change that, there's a process set out in standing orders, isn't there, if that, right? Or is there another process we can go through? I'm looking to you for guidance. So once the vote's cast and recorded, the process to look at the issue again is set out in the standing orders,
There is a
isn't it?
recommittal process,
Is
there
it?
not?
I don't
Yes,
know.
if the meeting wanted to vote again, then you can choose to do that.
How do you choose? You have to vote to vote again.
Yes, yes.
So I need to put forward a motion to...
Right, so what I'm going to do, councillors, I'm going to break for afternoon tea so that I can look at the rules myself, because, you know, I'm seeking guidance constantly on the rules, but I think I'll read them myself in the break. So we're going to break for a cup of tea, and we'll come back at 1:45. So we're starting back, thanks. So can you just note, Councillor Green has left the meeting.
Sorry, what was that? You wish I didn't hear that.
We're back on now, and I was just asking the democracy manager to note that Councillor Green has left the meeting. So, we all back? I did say 1:45, didn't I?
Yep.
Who?
Right, so,
Having a few wardrobe
Rule
malfunctions today. Why, I'll grip the
3.8.3.
Excuse me, Your Worship. can I-
Revocation or alteration of resolution at same meeting. That's the one I'm looking at.
Oh,
If during the course of a meeting fresh facts or information are received concerning a matter already resolved at the meeting, the previous resolution may be revoked or altered by the consent of 75% of the members then present and voting. So based on the requirement to have fresh facts or information which don't exist in this situation that's been raised, that does not apply. So
Wouldn't you regard Councillor O'Leary as a fresh fact, Your Worship?
no, no. Unfortunately,
She's
that-
quite
fresh,
she's,
Your Worship.
she's a fantasy.
I really, really hope I didn't hear that, Councillor Mallett, the way you expressed that.
What?
She's a fantasy, is what I heard.
Well, fact or fantasy? I mean, she's a dream girl. She's a, oh.
Okay.
Stop.
Yeah.
If we're going to be that
Six
precious.
remarks would be
Stop,
helpful.
Gary.
Right. So that's the rule that applies in these circumstances, and it's, I think the wording is clear. So we are now in a situation, councillors, where there's no motion or amendment, but Councillor Pascoe had signalled that he wished to move a motion, and then I've also, in the break, Councillor Young came and said he possibly has an amendment. So, Councillor Pascoe, do you?
Okay, so my motion is taken from 12C, and that is that the municipal pool is permanently closed, and I will so move.
Right, and is there a seconder for that? Councillor O'Leary is seconding that. So perhaps if you would like to put that on the board and remove what we've got there. Now, Councillor Young, did you have an amendment?
Yeah, I'd like to put in an amendment similar to the amendment by Councillor Chesterman and
Right.
Forsyth to change the amount to $2.5 million.
Right. Okay, and have you've got a seconder, Councillor Gallagher is the seconder.
Cut and paste.
Amen.
Amen. It's
2.5.
an arbitrary figure, pick one.
What was the figure, Councillor Young? What was the figure?
2.5.
2.5.
It's arbitrary, we just pluck it from the air, Your Worship.
Point of order, Madam Chair, that Councillor Wilson is being facetious.
I'm guilty, Your Worship, have me shot. Or if you really want to talk to me, put me in a room with Justin.
Okay, so that's right, Councillor Young, is it?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so Councillor Pascoe, do you wish to, so councillors, will we deal with these ones together or do you wish to deal with them separately?
Together.
Anyone for separate? No? Okay. So Councillor Pascoe, do you want to speak?
Okay, very briefly, because I have perhaps already, in opposing the other earlier two motions, given my views. Perhaps what I'd like to say is that I think, like Councillor Mallett, I learned to swim there back in the 1950s, and it was a great facility in its day. But I think the facility is now old. It's in the wrong place as far as the city is concerned. And I think in terms of this council embracing the Waikato spatial plan, we should as a council look to the expertise and support of Sport Waikato, who have not just in terms of Hamilton City but around the whole of the Waikato have and are still attempting to develop a plan, and certainly their recommendation is that a pool would be better, another pool for Hamilton would be better suited either in the northeast or as an attachment to the existing water world. So for that reason, and I do appreciate that there is a heritage value around the municipal pool,
But I think all of the points considered, I believe this to be the right decision, given where the pool is currently located and its condition.
Your Worship, a procedural question.
Yes?
Since we seem to be putting forward a new set of figures, would it be appropriate that staff actually now give us the financial implications of this move in light of our fiduciary duty to be informed?
Fiduciary duty.
Fiduciary.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the fiduciary applies in this regard, but anyway, that's a moot point you and I can take up later, Councillor.
FIDU.
So can you please enlighten us, CFO, about the finances on this one?
Could we put that
On the screen?
on the screen? Thank you, councillors. The proposal at $2.5 million, assuming again 2018 being the year where the majority of the money is spent, would see us push 2020 into 201% debt to revenue ratio, meaning we'd hit the 200% target in 2021. Debt would peak at $498,350,000 in 2024 and drop back to 173% by the end of the 10-year plan. Again, there would be $200,000 worth of operating costs coming through as part of that scenario as well.
Could I ask Paul what asset sales are projected for between now and 2020 that are not that are in the plan but are not accounted for in a financial sense?
Okay. The only one that I'm aware of at this stage is the pensioner housing, and that was very clearly put in as an assumption that we are not assuming a level of sale, and therefore we have left it unchanged throughout the 10-year plan until such time as that sale.
So if there were some pensioner housing sales any time in the next 3 years that we're already embarking on the process of, or will be on the 1st of July, they would change that bottom line figure there.
That's correct.
In a sense of reducing it, the percentage.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Leary, I had you next.
Oh, thank you, Worship. I'm supporting the motion because this has been quite a long journey and must be coming up nearly 4 years. And I believe that that has been time enough if the community was going to respond, that they would have responded with some kind of council private-public partnership by now. The site is absolutely important and we've had many visits there, and I think it's a sad indictment of the lack of foresights from previous councils going way back to not look after city assets, and that's why we are in the predicament that we are, and the pool has sadly been let to run to wreck and ruin. I do take some comfort in the fact that we have got funding in the future for a new pool in the north. Also that we have a new river plan, and that river plan is looking to celebrate that site, and the site is important, and the heritage aspect and the history on that site is important as well. It goes far beyond bricks and mortar of a swimming pool. Also the arts community have indicated for a very long time that they also are interested in this site as well, and what that may look like in the river plan, I don't know for the future, but that kind of has become our bit of an arts precinct down there. Sport Waikato also recommended to close it, and they are our authority for sport and recreation in the region, and that recommendation didn't come lightly from them. The other thing that I know is that when we're talking about any community facility, there's always going to be contention, and some on council and previous to me certainly know that with the Waikato Stadium, and that's the same contention is going to happen when we start discussing the Founders Theatre as well. So for those reasons I'm supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
I thought you'd have the amendment.
Well, no, because we agreed that we would take them all together.
Yeah, but
so
that's how you did it last time. Just
well,
you
that
had
was
the
because,
speakers.
Councillor McPherson,
Oh, that's right.
on your advice and Councillor King's, you said, well, we should deal with them
I
separately.
nevertheless think it's sensible, isn't it, for the mover of the amendment to put their case, so then we can all have the free and open
I've got
debate.
you next. Do you want to speak? Or?
I'm happy to leave it to Councillor Young at this stage, thanks.
Councillor Young, would you like to speak? Thanks.
Yep. Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'm not going to say any more about what the previous speaker been talking about, the amendment and the motions and the value of the municipal pool. And what I'm looking at with the new figure of 2.5 million, I'm hoping it's a private and public partnership, the Sing and Swim or Swim to fundraising, and able to join together and give life back to the municipal pool. And I believe 2.5 million, it won't have a huge, much bigger impact to the financial, the budget. And I want to keep this alive. And like previously for Councillor Wilson, about 670,000, I vote against that because to me, 670,000 is more or less like a death sentence to the pool because there's no way for them to raise $5 to $6 million to reopen the pool. And I believe 2.5 million, it give a bigger possibility for them to fundraising. And it's really good to have a pool in the southern end of the city, Victoria Street. And when I'm looking at the new pool, based on the option 1, it's going to be started in 2022. It's really too far away. And with this amendment, hopefully we can have the pool reopened in the next 2 to 3 years. And I encourage other fellow councillors to support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Contrary to the statement by Councillor O'Leary, I believe that a pool in the CBD is in the right place. It's in the right place for a whole lot of reasons. Obviously for heritage reasons, and everyone has sort of said, yeah, if all things being equal, it's certainly a heritage site, but much more so because that is where we're trying to expand the numbers of people in the city, not just at that end, but we're trying to make the city a good place to live. At the moment, it's a bit like a donut, if you look at the city, where things are happening, what's happening. There's very little in the CBD, a whole lot out in the suburbs. We are trying to attract people to work there. We're having some success. Right next door to this site is a large office block. It's moved in there. The arts precinct is slowly growing, hopefully, down that end. This is something that will provide a greater utility, I'd suggest, for the population of Hamilton than suburban sites in the short run. It will allow the 3.5, no, it's more than, it's about 8,000 people, I think, that work in the CBD an opportunity to have recreational swimming in their lunch times and other breaks before and after work. It'll enable all the schools, which still concentrate in that central city area, to have good access to a pool. I counterpose it in a sense to the pool out in the northeast, not just for the reason that Councillor Young talked. It'll be another 10 years before that's finished under our current plan. That also is not, in an access sense, very accessible to the city other than the 20,000 people or 25,000 people that live in the northeast. It's a long way from Hamilton East, Hillcrest, Claudelands, Melville, etc. like that. And certainly a long way from the CBD with heavy traffic. By the time that pool in the northeast gets built, we'll have a population in this city over 200,000 people. It will be fully utilised up there by the residents in that area. And Philip is one of them at the moment and certainly knows that area better than I do. And he supports a CBD-based pool, and I think we should be as well. I think it's very wrong to counterpose the arts community and arts needs and recreation needs. There is certainly a need for both of them in the CBD, and to say that the arts community is looking to go into that gap in a physical or geographical sense where the pool is, sends the wrong message. I don't believe the arts community are looking to take over that. Sure, if it was an empty field, they may well do because it's in a good place in that sense. But I don't think they're trying to push the municipal pool out. That's not the message I've had from them. I think they would be aghast at the suggestion that they might...
Point of order, Your Worship. I did not even insinuate that comment that Councillor McPherson is making. I'd like him to retract that.
No, I won't retract what I heard. I heard you say, Councillor O'Leary, that the arts community were looking to move into that area.
Point of order, that's not what I said at all.
Well, could we have that read back?
I think we're going to have to. So let's just stop. Democracy Manager, can you check the comment that Councillor O'Leary made in relation to the arts community? Okay. Right, so we're going to take a 5-minute break while we listen to that, thanks. Or at least Mary does, so we're in pause button for 5 minutes.
Base, which it's not at the moment. So I think it's wrong to counterpose arts and recreation in this sense at the moment. And that was the crux of my point, which stands. I also want to talk, though, about the dollar amount, which Councillor Young has put up in the resolution there. I believe that with the proposed asset sales, some of which I agree with, some of which I don't, over the next period, which are not accounted for in the budget, that is very clear, given that we're only going to be marginally over the 200% mark in 2020. We're going to be 201%, I think was the figure, Paul. I think I've got that right without needing a tape. I believe that asset sales could in part be applied to this particular facility, or to this particular $2.5 million, in enough of a part to keep us at or below that figure. So those that are concerned about the fiduciary requirements or needs of this council, have I got that right, Councillor Wilson? Fiduciary, thank you, should be satisfied that this particular capital expenditure is not going to push us beyond the boundaries. I think there's, when you think about the value of some of the asset sales you've heard about from Paul, you will know there's far more than enough in that pot coming through to prevent us going over that boundary if we apply some of it to funding this. So I don't think it's being fiscally irresponsible to talk about this sort of expenditure. I think it's being socially and culturally responsible to restore that pool to a usable state in that site.
Thank you. I just get a clarification from the CFO in relation to the quantum number of the debt at that period of time. What would the actual dollar amount be, given that some councillors are saying marginal difference?
498,350,000.
Could you just have a look at that for us and let us know, thanks?
Don't believe me.
Look, I'm sure it's right, Councillor Wilson, but I'm just trying to make sure that the staff are the ones that tell us that, so that you know.
That's correct.
We rely on them, you see, as the CFO, so it's his responsibility to tell us. So
the figure that Councillor Wilson has quoted is the correct figure for the peak debt in 2024 at 498,350. The debt to revenue ratio would be in...
No, I asked about the quantum amount. So what is it, 498?
498.
So by including the 2.5 million, by
2024, we would be at 498,350,000. Sorry, 498,350,000. In 2020, our debt would be 457,290,000, which is 201%.
Sorry, what was the figure before that? You said 498, did you not?
Yeah, in 2024, when debt peaks, the figure that Councillor Wilson quoted would be 498,350,000. Her Worship asked about 2020, and the quantum of debt in 2020 is 457,290,000.
Okay, just want to clarify that, thank you. All right, any other speakers for or against? Could we put the
Yes, thank you.
matters up again, please?
Opposed.
Okay, so Councillor Wilson?
Your Worship, I, on walking to this chamber this morning, was contemplating how dissatisfied I was with the plan and the fact that we were going to spend $100 million more in the next 10 years than I had thought. And I must confess, the last thing I thought would be that I'd be in this chamber actually thinking that we're going to spend $2.5 million, even more than I thought when I walked here this morning. And I cannot believe that we are intending to do this. Can I remind this council that we have, even in the most latest round, gone out to the community with a new series of promises, which I felt was unpalatable. This arbitrary figure that you've plucked from the sky, and I have to say it's an arbitrary figure and it's plucked from the sky because there's no foundation to it, there is no report that supports it, it's just half of the quantum that was put forward and lost. At least my 670 was from a staff report in terms of what we would spend if we decided to demolish it. You've just plucked this figure out of the air. And I just remind you, and I bring your attention to the fact that we will then see in 2024 debt climb to $498 million. The pool is important, but what you're saying is it's more important than a whole lot of other important strategies. One would imagine that if you had thought of spending $2.5 million, we might look at re-employing some of the people we got rid of community and some of the community initiatives. Would that not be more important than spending it on a pool? So I just cannot believe that we're about to do this, and I really encourage you to say no to the amendment and support the motion and say that enough's enough. Again, I stand prepared to spend what we would spend getting rid of, and I'll continue to be in that position so that as a result, if the motion is successful, we'll be back here in a year or so with the report, having to decide what we're finally going to do, and then the 670,000 will come up again, and I would be prepared to put that towards keeping it. But I would not support 2.5. It's an arbitrary figure, not underpinned by any report at all.
Any other speakers? Yes, Councillor Gallagher.
Yes, I certainly respect the counter view of Councillor Wilson and his contribution to this debate and this discussion. I respect that totally. As I said, within the context of our CBD, riverbank, ferrybank development concept, I think there is an opportunity to see if we can realise, if you like, the Mark Wassing concept, which personally I would probably put ahead of a Wellington Street Beach development. And I would personally see this development relating as it would do to the Ferrybank development and the Arts Precinct as very much part of that regeneration of that part of the city, acknowledging, of course, the heritage value of the municipal pools. I did support the original motion of Councillor Wilson, I hasten to add, and I guess we're trying to find if there's a medium or somewhere where the majority would go with. As Councillor McPherson said, the irony for me is I don't agree with some of the asset sales up on the books, but in view of those asset sales, obviously the figures up there don't necessarily say the whole picture. But I want to say this. Councillor Wilson has a different view to me. I deeply respect his passion, energy and contribution to this council and this debate. We happen to agree to differ. And in the end, democracy is about to be served in terms of the numbers are about to go up. I would ask members, I think this is an absolute crossroads, as to whether or not this historic pool that sits along the Freiburg pool in Wellington, sits along the Parnell bars, the bars, municipal bars in Auckland, whether or not this historic pool survives into a new form as envisaged by the Mark Wassing design. I guess that is an absolute crossroads, and I would just ask members to reflect before they exercise their vote, albeit I don't for one moment question that all members of this chamber have turned this over comprehensively and will come to their judgment.
Thank you. Councillor King?
Can I ask for some clarity on Councillor Ewan Wilson's, if the motion carries, does it come back to us to make another decision on the $670,000 to demolish the site, or by voting for this motion, is that going to happen without it coming back to council?
No, so I think, Councillor King, what we heard from the General Manager was that there's no provision in the budget for demolition and removal. And what we also heard was that the pool is located in the Ferry Bank area. And we also heard that that is going to be the subject of a detailed planning, master planning exercise, I think Jake called it, in the coming year. So those are the matters that we've been told.
So it will continue to be mothballed?
Well, it says it's permanently closed. Yeah.
So my understanding is there is the $10,000 per annum to permanently close it, currently included with the 10-year plan. So if the motion goes through, that'll be what we do. It'll be mothballed and the gates will be closed until such point in time a decision is made by this council what to do with that property.
Thank you.
Okay, right. Any other speakers? So, Councillor Pascoe, you have right to reply because you're the mover.
Yes, I would like to reply and just cover these points, I think, which came up in the debate. One is the $2.5 million enough? I mean, previously we had a much higher figure of $4.5 million, which would have, I think, created some pressure for the single swim group to cover off the rest. Now we're asking them to find another $2 million, and I'm not sure whether we've got enough confidence around for that. I don't think the Wellington Street versus the Muni's option is a comparable option because the Wellington Street funding is not part of this 10-year plan. And I think finally the asset sales are not a given, and as Chair of Finance I would be extremely cautious about trying to fund major projects from contemplated sales of assets.
Point of order, Your Worship. The word I don't have a problem with anything except the word contemplated. I believe that it is a decision on the council book in the papers today we've got here, not the newspapers, our papers. It actually says we've made a decision to sell, and there are processes already underway there, which obviously kick in the public sense on the 1st of July, but it's not just contemplation, it's a decision. So there's a difference. That's a formal decision to sell that's there.
I think it's, with respect, Councillor McPherson, I don't see anything wrong with the statement that Councillor Pascoe made. He's talking about contemplated asset sales. I mean,
the word contemplation
we've got some we've identified are happening, and whether they come to fruition or not, of course, is a different matter. We might have said we're wanting to sell, But whether we do, in fact, in the end sell depends on a lot of things, doesn't it? Do we get an offer? How much is it? All those things. So,
and my concern is we're spending the money before we've actually sold the assets.
And I think that was sort of what the thrust
No,
was.
Your Worship, the word contemplation clearly means thinking about. That's the definition of it. And we're doing more than thinking about it. We're actually putting it out to the market.
Yeah.
And we're putting it out to the market well before the expenditure is contemplated.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson, for your contribution.
Okay, can I continue?
You can.
Again, it surprises me that a number of councillors around this table who no more than 6 weeks ago were opposing option 1 are now favouring, and I agree with Councillor Wilson on this, are now favouring even more debt over and above what option 1 contemplates. So to me it suggests that perhaps over the last 6 weeks and listening to the community consultation and reading the submissions, that perhaps those councillors who now favour increased debt are now supporters of option 1.
All right. So, councillors, we're now going to vote on the amendment, and then so we're voting on the amendment.
The amendment is lost, 5 votes for, 7 against.
All right, we're now voting on the motion.
Motion is carried, 8 votes for,
All right, thank
4
you.
against.
Thank you. All right, the next item on page 12 is cycling infrastructure.
Excuse me, just to be completely clear, that vote does nothing to change the 10-year plan, because that's what was in the 10-year plan.
It was $10,000 per annum to basically
Yes.
keep the pool mothballed,
So
and that's
we-
what will continue to be this case.
So that vote had no impact on the 10-year plan
No
that went
numbers
out to
changed.
consultation. Thank you.
That's right.
Okay, cycling infrastructure. So the way I read this, Chris, is that there's no proposal or anything from staff to consider here. What you're saying is that that amount of funding is actually already in the budget.
Correct.
Right, and you're not recommending making any changes.
Correct.
Right, thank you. All right, so are there any questions on that portion, or otherwise we'll move on?
Just a point of understanding, the municipal pools, the funding for the municipal pools was in the 10-year plan, but we had a recommendation from the staff. The funding for the cycle infrastructure is in the 10-year plan, but we don't have a recommendation. So just inconsistent on
so to
the
be
approach
clear,
of doing it.
To be clear, the municipal pool was a proposal that we formally went out and asked a question on. It was a requirement, a legal requirement we needed to consult on the decision as to what to do with the pool. That was the decision that council has just made, was because it was a very specific proposal. In terms of cycling, the submissions have asked for, in summary terms, $1 million a year to be allocated for cycling. What we have identified through the analysis and obviously through the work in this report is that actually there is approximately $1 million per year in the budgets for cycling already, and they are sitting in a variety of budgets. By drawing that information out to council's attention here, we have advised or concluded for council that there is no additional money required in the budget to meet what the submitters are seeking. There is already $1 million per year available for cycling initiatives as per the budgets identified, noting that part of that money is from a discretionary fund of which the working group presides over. So hence there's no recommendation to change the budget. It is staff's view that the budgets that are there already meet the request of the submitters.
All right, so does that answer your question, Councillor Mallett?
I think so.
Right, thank you.
On the
Councillor
same point, if I
McPherson?
could, Your Worship, with following that, there's a problem with what the General Manager's just said, because while he says there's money, $1 million there for cycling, he's then acknowledged that some of that's in a discretionary fund, which also is potentially usable for a number of other transport-related activities, and there's a requirement that a particular group of councillors, I believe, and maybe staff, I'm not sure, make a decision on that from year to year, not even sort of looking ahead the same length as our plan.
That's correct. So
yeah. So, but the report would have you believe. I'm not saying this is deliberate. I'm just saying there's a bit of a conundrum there. Have you believe that there's actually $1 million there for cycling? Well, that's not necessarily true. And if you were thinking that will do the job, it may not be the case. So I'm a bit worried about that.
So, Councillor McPherson, along that line, then what do you want to do about it?
Well, I'm not sure what the brief of that decision-making body is, and I was going to ask a question in relation to that. Can this council mandate that to spend all its money in this area?
Yes,
or spend $1 million?
Yes, it could.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. So the report has actually got a note under the table just to indicate it is subject to that prioritisation process. The practice in past years, which we talked about when we adopted the draft plan for prioritisation, and the practice has been to go to strategy and policy with the integrated transport fund and get direction from full strategy and policy, and hence council are the areas that would spend the money in. Public transport, walking and cycling, etc. And then the working group would pick up that general direction and work with us on projects within that general direction from council.
So what's the total fund available, and will it all be used up for cycling if there's $1 million a year going into cycling?
So the figure that we've put in paragraph 12, is it on page 13, is the figure you're looking at is 600,000. So the total fund is 900,000 of council share. It has the potential to leverage an NZTA funding. So the assumption that we've made is 1/3 of that fund to cycling, and that we could leverage an NZTA equivalent contribution of about 50%. So that's the assumption that we've made in there, but noted.
Just one third?
1/3. 1/3 of the 900, which is 300.
Right.
Double that with subsidy. So that's the assumption we've made, but we've noted it is subject to further direction from council through that working group and strategy and policy.
So it would be fair to say it's realistic to spend that much on cycling each year and still get some other bangs for your bucks in other transport areas?
Correct.
Thank you.
Right, any other questions on this? No. Okay. Oh, yes, Councillor Gallagher.
Just Chris, in terms of our aspiration as per the cycling plan that has been published and talked about, are you comfortable that the aspirations of that plan can have a good chance of being met within this envelope, subject to, of course, getting the right central government subsidy?
The biking plan adopted was a 30-year
right. Yeah.
So there's clearly projects in there that are desirable, but not within the scope of discretionary transport funding.
Right.
So it will take successive decision by council over time to implement the biking plan. But there is a very good project which we've highlighted in there called the Western Rail Corridor, where we've made the applications to the Urban Cycle Fund to try and leverage a really good external funding opportunity. So depending on the decisions council make, we can certainly deliver a very significant project in the plan within the next 1 to 2 years. But it will take subsequent decisions from council on some of the other big projects. But I think there is a lot that we can do with a portion of the discretionary transport fund. If I look carefully at the Cycle Action Waikato submission, there's a lot of stuff like signage and things that we can do, which are all covered by our biking plan, to bring consistency to some of those areas of concern to them.
Thank you. Any other questions on this one? No? Yes, Councillor Forsyth?
Are we going to resolve anything on this?
Well, we don't need to. Well, the staff are recommending there's no resolution required.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I would like
so if you want to change that, you would need to put a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to signal one then.
So what is your motion?
That that council commit $300,000 of the discretionary transport fund to cycling over the 10-year plan.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't quite.
That council commit to $300,000 of the $900,000 discretionary transport fund to cycling in the 10-year plan.
For each year, do you mean?
Yeah, for each year of the 10-year plan.
So you're fixing it.
I'll second that.
Rather than leave that to be something
Did you want to say something, General
$3
Manager?
million.
over 10 years.
Yeah, $3
That's
million.
per year.
No, it's already in a budget. It's already in the budget.
300,000.
everyone.
300
Already
per
in the
year, so
budget.
3 million over 10 years.
Yep. So to be clear, this is money that's already in the budget.
Let the General Manager speak. This is existing budget.
Just a couple of points. We have that process through strategy and policy where you could do that. The point I'd make, the 600,000, i.e. 300 of our money is an average over the 10 years. To leverage the opportunity for the Western Trail Fund, in year one we would need $500,000 for that 1 year only. So it might vary from year to year on how you spend your money. So Councillor McPherson actually asked the question at strategy and policy whether we could see a longer term view on how we allocate the money, and I think that's a piece of work that we need to do. If you passed a resolution to only allocate $300,000, we wouldn't be able to leverage the opportunity for the Western Rail Trail. But over 10 years, we expect a third is a reasonable assumption out of the discretionary transport.
Thanks. It's a good point. Well, then I'd add a minimum of 300,000 then.
But that may not meet the average that Chris is talking about, an average of 300. What about if it was a total of 3 million over 10 years? That allows flexibility.
That's a good idea. Okay, thank you.
General Manager, just so that councillors are clear, this is an existing budget. This is not new money, correct? This is about how it's apportioned.
Correct. This is an existing budget, provided it gets reconfirmed in the 10-year plan process, obviously. In my view, there is some downfalls in locking in an answer now until you see the whole program. For instance, Council has already passed a previous resolution to make a contribution to the Gallagher Road intersection. So there's a number of different things that it might be good to see alongside each other before you lock in some decision. That's just my opinion.
I mean, that's good advice.
I understand what you're getting at, but my concern is that because it's totally discretionary, that cycling may very well be overlooked depending on what the flavour of council is at the time.
I could add that if you pass that resolution, it wouldn't stop us implementing some previous council decisions like Gallagher. We could still do, if that resolution passed, we could still fit in Gallagher's intersection.
Did you have a question, Councillor Pascoe?
Yes, I do. Just off the top of your head, Chris, what would fall out of what you would otherwise spend that money on if let's say 300,000 on average was allocated each year to that specific spend? Are there some projects in the rest of the spend which you would see as immediately falling out?
No, I don't think so. I think that Gallagher's is the one that springs to mind, but I think the headroom is in the budget to do that. It's just the balance that council wants to strike. Remembering the fund was integrated transport, so it was to deal with public transport and walking and cycling and some of the more sustainable transport modes. So if council could decide to spend it all on walking and cycling and less on public transport.
So apart from the Gallagher's one, there's no commitment to that annual spend at this stage that you would have particular projects falling out as a result of it?
Correct.
Okay, so we have a motion. Councillor Forsyth, you just want to get clear, is that what your motion is, having now heard the discussions?
What did you say, Councillor McPherson?
Well, it would have been council commits 3 million over the 10-year plan period.
That was it, yeah.
To blah blah. Or of the 9 million discretionary transport fund.
Yep. And remove obviously each year.
The name of the budget is the integrated transport,
Integrated transport.
rather than discretionary. So I think
Thank
we
you.
change the word discretionary to integrated.
No, that was right, that last bit, wasn't it, Margaret? But that's just been cut out?
That was for each year.
Oh, I see.
The council commits 3 million over the 10-year plan.
But it had, oh, yeah, sorry, it's already in there.
It's a bit clumsy, that's all. That council commits 3
Well, they
million over the 10-year plan period.
And it can work out what it means.
Over
Was that
the
a minimum,
10-year plan.
councillor?
Yeah. Of the, yes, of the 9 million, that's better, thank you.
So, councillor, was that minimum?
To cycling for,
You probably want the word minimum in there, don't you? Commits a minimum of 3 million.
yes,
And that allows for some flexibility to go beyond that if it's appropriate.
yeah, thank you. The cycling.
Okay, is that read what you wanted to read?
Yes, that looks good.
Councillor McPherson, does that satisfy you?
Oh, yeah, I
Seconder?
was happy with the principle.
Okay.
I just have a question. Does that mean that you have a limit per year, how much you spend? You can spend 2 million in first year, 1 million next year, is that, or 900,000 a year?
No, it'd be 900,000 per year.
Because that's what's in the budget each year in that fund. That's already fixed.
But it
as
doesn't
the
say
amount.
each year.
No.
I think the words minimum probably covers your concern, councillor.
All right. Okay, so any other questions on this? So, Councillor Forsyth, do you want to speak to it?
Yes, thank you. Look, the reason I wanted to put this recommendation up is, as I mentioned before, I think it commits council, no matter who that council might be over the next 10 years, over the next, the subsequent elections, to keeping its eye on the progress of the cycle plan, or the biking plan, I should say. I think having the minimum shows that there is a commitment. I think over the 10-year period as well, gives enough scope and flexibility to the use of that discretionary fund. So it's not locking in a fixed amount each year. It does allow council staff to respond to the needs of other forms of public transport, walking and other modes of transport around the city as well. So I think that's a good thing. I think it responds to the direction of cycling and the desires actually too of a large number of submitters. By no means does it measure up to the million requested, but I think 300,000, well, 3 million over 10 years is a reasonable starting point, and it's just a really good way of solidifying and helping the biking plan actually come to fruition. I think the wonderful thing about the biking plan is that it has nominated several projects, several exciting projects that the city could use. It's out for consultation now, and of course the order of those projects or the delivery of those projects would be subsequent council decisions, but having a budget or having a financial pool or source that council can turn to for the delivery of those projects is is very important. I think it also signals to our funder, well, funders, whoever they might be, but largely NZTA, that if council is committed through this type of action, that it'll really put us in a better position when we do seek funding. And yeah, I think it's a total package. It's not only the plan, but it's having the transparency around a potential to deliver the projects and deliver what we would think are important for the biking plan for the city.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. And before I start, I just want to make out that I am not anti-bike, but I am pro-ratepayer, and more importantly, I am pro-reality. And unfortunately, a lot of the drive behind the biking program or the cycling program that we've got is based on a fallacious belief that if you build it, they will come. And we have been building this for a decade, and our records and all of our reality shows us that fewer and fewer people are cycling. Despite how much money we have spent in terms of cycle lanes, in terms of education programs, in terms of enticements and incentives to get people on bikes, they are choosing other forms of travel. And I think we cannot afford to engage in a flight of fantasy, spending our ratepayers' money on something that clearly we have seen through reality, through what's actually happening on the roads, that fewer people, and all of our own stats show, fewer and fewer people are using bikes to come to work, bikes to go to school. More and more people are choosing the convenience and the luxury and the all sorts of things, the safety, all sorts of things of a car. And I think we are absolutely wrong. We're building what will be looked back upon as a great big white elephant, unfortunately. And I am pro. I like biking. I like cycling. I think it's fantastic. I think one of the issues we are constantly doing is we are combining commuter cycling with recreational cycling and trying to think in terms of healthy societies and getting people on bikes and overcoming diabetes and obesity, and that's thrown out as a reason to force, well, not force people, but spend a heck of a lot of money to get people on road bikes on the road, and people just do not do it. I mean, I ask how many, I guarantee you a tiny percentage of the elected members got to and will leave this meeting on a bike. There are a small number of staff members who are probably doing it, and you know, I think our people, the majority of our elected members would say they're pro-bike, but we don't ride a bike because it just doesn't suit us. So it's a dreadful, dreadful waste of ratepayer money, of expertise, of effort, of passion to try and force people into a form of transport that they simply will not engage in. Now, I'm not saying that people won't. You know, we will get a small increase in people who ride the nice river trails and all that sort of stuff. That will continue on, but that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is spending millions of dollars trying to reduce road congestion by getting people on bikes, and it won't happen. So whether or not it's a lovely idea and it's a neat idea, it just won't happen no matter how much money we spend. So I think it's irrespective of whether I'd like people to ride bikes, people just have shown, and they will continue to show, that they will use their cars. And this completely ignores the impact of new technologies, and we don't know what these things are going to do. You know, driverless cars, that thing called Uber, where people can, you know, it's almost like a free market, private sector taxi system situation. There's a whole lot of technology that will improve both the economics, the safety, and the convenience of using our bike, of using vehicles, which is going to just make commuting on a bike even less and less benefit. Well, make the value package between using a car and a bike greater. So I'm sorry, but this is based on good intention, but it's a flight of fantasy. So I just cannot support it.
Councillor McPherson.
If I could just start by asking a quick question of the General Manager. Chris, how much is spent, approximately, ballpark figure, on road transport by this council each year in the coming year, if that's easier?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure of that answer, but it would
You're spending it, you should know.
Yeah, it would certainly, Blair will just give you a percentage in a minute.
It's our biggest.
Not a
And
percentage.
capital you're talking about?
The whole lot. Capital and operational.
So over 10 years, it's 507 million.
Sorry?
Operating.
Sorry, how much?
507 million over 10 years operating cost.
507.
Projects is 216 million over 10 years, which is about 216 out of 750 million. So it's about a
723 million.
So sorry, the final...
723 million over 10 years. Okay, the cyclists, according to the latest stats, account for 2% of the transport population. This is, I saw 2% of 723 million. Let's call it around 700 million. Don't worry about the 23. Would say that if you were spending proportionally, you'd probably be spending 14 million on cyclists, on certain cycle facilities and operations to give an equitable share. And this is not just a mathematical exercise, Gary. It's actually an exercise that was put up many years ago when you were actually first on council by Cycle Action Waikato, and you responded quite well to it at that time, that you thought, yeah, they shouldn't get more than they deserve, but they should get what they deserve. And in this case, the request for 3 million over 10 years is actually only about 20% of what they deserve. If you're looking at those maths figures that I just came up with, 2% of the 723 million. So I think I would agree with you in one sense, it is unrealistic. We should be spending a lot more than that. But having due regard to your sensibilities and sensitivities, I think 3 million's not a bad start for the next 10 years.
Okay, Councillor Gallagher?
Yes, I think I come to different conclusions to Councillor Mallett on this one. And I think what we are starting to see is a significant sea change around cycling in this country, and it goes back to the days when Leo, Gary and I and Dave were, you know, cycling away to school, and Margaret and others, to a situation, and the velodrome's, I think, symbolic of that, is that, you know, that Waikato home of cycling, and that we are seeing an increasing uptake of recreational cycling, and I've certainly noticed it as a pedestrian walking along the river and around the lake. And I think there's going to be some issues around etiquette, protocol, and cyclists ringing their bells and not running me over, and I think there are a whole lot of issues there. But what Ed is saying is that is increasingly prevalent, and then from there we're starting to see the recreational cyclists, as I've mentioned before, a la Europe, starting to say, well, oops, on a fine summer day, a nice day, I can actually commute. So I think we are going to see a change. The other issue too, in terms of our older population, and something I'll be interested through the community forum when we review our older persons policy, is around transport needs and the blend of the increasing use of total mobility scooters. Now, they're not on-road motorbikes, but subject to proper regulations and rules and understanding, again, they would be potentially users of some of these off-road routes, etc., etc. So, as Councillor McPherson says, this actually is a very conservative, incredibly cautious, conservative toe in the water, really. But I think we will find that over time we will become more and more like European cities. I think we're seeing that in some of the Australian cities as well. So I'll be supporting the Forsyth McPherson, two good colleagues of mine, in terms of their particular motion. It's a conservative step ahead, but I think at least it gets us, starts to head us in the right place.
Right, any other for or against? So I'll go to right reply, Councillor Forsyth.
Thank you. Look, I just wanted to test with Councillor McPherson. I just wondered if I could add excluding, in addition to any external funding, including NZTO subsidies, because
Yes, that's, I'm
Yeah,
happy.
I just think that it's important to, for the waters not to be muddied between, well, council money and external funding money.
That was how the general manager explained it.
Yes, yeah.
This is our money.
Yeah.
Do you need that in the resolution to make it clear to you?
I think it would be helpful just to clarify that.
Okay.
Doesn't it already say council commits?
We chose from elsewhere and then
Yes.
it could be read differently.
Yeah.
These are the only
Just so that it's clear that there's
Hmm?
a council contribution and an external contribution.
Okay, that was all you wanted to add, Bullseye?
Yes.
Yes, right. All right, we're going to vote on this on the board.
Carried 10 votes for, 2 against.
Okay, so councillors, today's now at an end. Now, we're going to return tomorrow, and we'll start at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and the day will be allocated 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. tomorrow. All right?
Your
So we're
Worship,
adjourned till tomorrow.
I'll be an apology for tomorrow morning.
Right, thank you.
I'll be an apology for the whole time, Your Worship.
Right, thank you.
You need to
All right.
I may be an apology for lateness, Your Worship.
Right, okay.
Maybe.
All right.
Tomorrow's Friday.
Right. It's not actually even in the
Yeah. All right, so we're
So we
adjourned
didn't
till
have
tomorrow
a,
morning, 9 a.m.